mask mandate. This is an action item, and Annette is going to help us introduce our guest. I believe that Gina Pinnell and Dr. Irvin are both on the line with us tonight. So Annette, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for helping organize this.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Annette Spickard, City Manager here. At your last meeting, we did discuss and you did extend the existing public health order in McCall mandating the use of face coverings, or as people refer to it, a mask. At that time, you also asked for us to work with Central District Health and St. Luke's to prepare public health metrics that you could use to evaluate when to end the mandate. We've done that, and in your packet is the first draft of a proposed set of metrics. There's 4 metrics that were included. These were recommended by Central District Health. And since that time, of course, our numbers continue to change since the last council meeting in terms of the public health statistics for our region, which is the Central District Health region, as well as the state, as well as Valley County. So I did ask Police Chief Justin Williams, who, as you know, is our incident commander, in charge of our COVID pandemic response. I asked him if he could please update you as well on where we're at on those numbers and give you a status update. So I know Gina is on the line from Central District Health, and I'm pretty sure I saw Dr. Irvin as well. And so I'm going to start, I think, with Justin, and then Gina will help facilitate your deliberations tonight in selecting any or all of the metrics and how you would like them combined as guidance for you to adopt. One point of clarification, because I did receive one question about this already, is whether or not you're legally bound or required to follow these metrics after you adopt them. And so our city attorney is also on the line if you have questions about that. But the way the resolution is written, these are guidelines to help you make the decision, but ultimately you make whatever decision you feel is appropriate for the community, and you take these metrics into consideration. And that's my understanding of how this would work if you adopt them. So I didn't know if Bill wants to clarify that point at all before you get into your deliberations, but I thought that might be helpful for the public and for the council to know that.
Are you asking?
Well, I'm asking if you want, if there's anything else to share regarding that, if they adopt guidelines by resolution, if they're required to follow them to the T.
Well, resolution is exactly, it has the force of law. However, the way it's worded, it is, as you say, just guidelines, with the idea being that it gives the council some sort of a benchmark to actually assess, are the trends such that given these metrics, it's okay to remove the order. So it's long answer to yes, it's flexible. The council ultimately makes the decision. These are just sideboards on the decision is all.
Thank you. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Gina Pinnell, or excuse me, Justin Williams, to give you an update on where we're at with our numbers.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Justin Williams, Chief of Police, City of McCall. As Annette pointed out, I will provide the updates of where we would stand in the metrics to give you an idea of where the city is at, where the county's at, and where the state lay with these metrics in mind. And thanks to Gina Pinnell, she actually had plugged in some of these numbers as well, and they came up. Fortunately, both of us came up with the same numbers, so that's a good thing. So the biweekly 14-day case rate is one of the metrics, and it must remain in the green zone, which is less than 5 per 100,000 for 4 weeks. For the date period March 28th, if we go back 4 weeks, that would be the first week. We were at 5.02. April 4th, we were at 5.02. April 11th, 4.39, and April 18th will be the next one, and that's to be determined as of yet. So for those 3 weeks, we are right at that less than 5 for the metric. And so we are right at that metric at this particular time. The next metric that you have is Valley County vaccine uptake for 16 plus years of age, or 16 years of age or older, reaches at least 65%. Right now we sit at 53% in Valley County. The third metric would be Valley County percent positivity remains below 5%. The positivity rate for Valley County has been under 5% already since April 1st, so we do qualify on that metric as well. The final metric would be at least 1 dose of the vaccine for age 65 and older across the state reaches 75%. Currently, statewide, we are at 77%. And so those are the metrics that you were given, you were provided, and that is where we currently sit at this point in time. If we, as Gina pointed out, she also said if we wanted to look at the health district, we're at 80.1% for those 65 and older. So we're doing pretty well on that metric as well. And so if you take all of this into consideration, we're very close to reaching these metrics as we sit, except for the positivity, or correction, the vaccine uptake for 16 years of age or older. That's the one where we are still below the 65% recommendation of the metric. So if you have questions on that, please let me know. I'll be glad to answer.
Thanks, Justin. I think as we have Gina describe each of these metrics and what the logic is behind them and what they mean, the council may have questions, and we'll all as staff try to answer all of them the best we can and why those were the recommended ones. So Gina, do you want to walk through that and any other thoughts you've had since initially proposing those, and what the Central District Health Board is thinking at this time?
Yeah, happy to, Annette. Good evening, Council and Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. It's good to see you again. It's a routine meeting we tend to have. I really appreciate the time. And I guess I just start with, it's you guys are asking the right questions, and they're tough questions. So we really do appreciate that. One of the things that I wanted to first talk about that's in your I think it's in your packet is related to the risk factors. So as you know, being a resort community, you have some unique characteristics. And as I think about these, when we look at health risks and health assessments, we look at individual communities and what makes them, a plus or minus, so to speak, in certain measures. And something non-related to COVID that comes to mind, for example, and I'll share this, hopefully that it resonates with you, is, for example, my daughter is 6 years old and she likes to do cartwheels while we're walking. So I know to step back at least 3 or 4 feet from her when we are walking down the street. That is kind of how we look at these risk factors. What do you know about your community and how that impacts the decisions you need to make? On the same side of things, my friends may not know that and could get kicked in the shins, so to speak. So when we think about these risk factors, we're looking at the tourist and resort community that you guys inhabit, and that you're such a well-known, place and desirable place to be, that impacts the people that come to you. And in fact, we were just hearing from our lead epidemiologist that when you think about someone who learns about becoming positive, they have a 14-day period prior to the onset of their symptoms where they could have been exposed. And our team is hearing that people are in Valley County. That's something that our team is recognizing. They're hearing that through investigation. So that's something to be aware of, and you all have really been aware of from the get-go. You have the second homeowners that are high prevalence of the people that live in your community, whether that's permanently or consistently. And then you have a rural city that is the overall perception by visitors that things are a little bit lax. And so I won't go through every single one of these, but we know case rates are really challenging for small communities because just a single case or a single family unit could, become infected with COVID and make your case rates kind of go out of whack or move pretty rapidly in the wrong direction. And so when we look at that first metric, which was the biweekly case rate, so this is the metric that we use for schools for that green and yellow and red category, and that seems appropriate because it gives that 2-week flexibility versus the 7-day state average that is found on the state website, because you only have the 7-day barrier, not barrier, but kind of parameters. Any increase in cases can make you jump pretty high or pretty low pretty quickly. So when Justin gave those numbers, I would count, he said 5.02, I would count that as 5%, 5 per 100,000. So just because you are 0.02 over that, I would consider that, honestly, from looking at the numbers, that you would meet that metric. So we feel like that's really appropriate. It's a good sense of the county specifically overall, not just the city of McCall, and it gives you a sense of how that's impacting your current residents, whether they're, that are permanently there, since that's how that's tracked, is by primary residents. The Valley County vaccine uptake for 16 and older. So there was a lot of discussion. I believe Dr. Urban on the previous council meeting talked about 75%. And I think we all are very hopeful that that rate increases. And I think it's becoming more and more of a reality that we're not sure when we'll get there or how we'll get there from vaccinating providers across our district. We've kind of hit saturation. We have, continued appointments and people are getting their first doses, but demand is definitely decreased. Supply is in abundance. I wouldn't say necessarily, but if you want a vaccine, you can find a place to get it. So you're hovering right around that 53%. And I don't know how quickly that will change. So I bring that to your attention because when we originally prescribed these or recommended these metrics, it was with the recommendation that all 4 of these should be met. But I think that would almost make these metrics impossible to meet if we're looking at that 65% threshold. So if we use 3 of the 4 metrics, then that makes it more achievable. It makes it realistic and something that the community can look to. Since if you look at the other ones, which is Valley County percent positivity, you've met that since April 1st. So over the last 3 weeks, you've been under 5%. And then that first dose of 65 and older, and that one's on there. And our justification really is that is the population that is most vulnerable to this virus. And so as a district, I think I would recommend, instead of the statewide, we look at that because you're kind of surrounded by our counties. That's 80%. And we just have a better sense of that versus statewide, because if that number increases or decreases in Southeast Idaho, does that necessarily impact you as much? Compared to our own boundaries that are kind of surrounding you. So I think we would maybe make the recommendation that we look at that district number versus the state number for 1 dose. But all of those are being met with the exception of the 16 years of age or higher getting at least 1 dose, being at 53%. So if we made these 3 of the 4 metrics, if cases remain where they're at now at low rates, you're a week away from meeting all of the criteria, again, with that exception of the 16 and older population for that first vaccine. So I think that's hopefully gives you a little bit of context and justification as to what we were recommending and working with Dr. Urban. And I know he's on the line. Maybe he has something else he would like to add.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. That was an excellent summary of what we've been talking about. And it is true that we are probably a week away from meeting these metrics, assuming that the city council chooses to make it 3 of 4. I think that the vaccine rate of 65% is not a particularly high bar, but it may take us a while to get there simply because we are seeing decreasing demand for the vaccine. The fact that we do have statewide have met the metric of our 65 and older being vaccinated is very important. If we're going to get to a situation where we are not seeing community spread of the virus at rates that risk us getting back to exponential growth, I don't use the term herd immunity anymore because it's a very abused term, but where we get to a point where we're at low risk for exponential growth of viral spread, I think that getting as many people vaccinated as possible and encouraging as many people to get vaccinated as possible is critical. If we can create interest and motivation to do so, I think that's helpful in our whole process. But Valley County and McCall have done very well. I still emphasize that we're doing well because of the leadership that you've provided, that the mask mandate has made a difference. There is no doubt. That our citizens are doing a good job of following the guidelines and maintaining a low risk for viral spread in the community. As we get more visitors in another few weeks, Memorial Day and beyond, I'm concerned that we're going to see more growth of the virus and potentially variants and so on. But at least right now, things are going well. So, and I agree with what the things that Gina has said in her presentation.
And I think, Annette, if I might just, we had our Board of Health meeting, I think it was last Friday, and we have our public health advisory that's in place, and we had two metrics there. One was a district-wide case count of 30 per 100,000, and the other was that the 65 and older had the chance to get vaccinated fully, so that both doses plus the 2 weeks, and we have met that as a district. So we anticipate an update to our public health advisory coming out in the next week or so. Ideally, it is challenging. We're hearing the same things down here in Boise and from other counties. You know, what is the freedoms that we get for all the hard work that we've done? You know, and if we're vaccinated, do we really have to wear masks? And I don't have the details of what's listed in there, but I can tell you that I anticipate that it will change, and it will not be the same sort of restrictions that are in there now. The recommendation to mask won't change. You know, maybe the modification is, hey, if you're outdoors, maybe that's a little bit different than if you're indoors. If you're outdoors and vaccinated, maybe that's a little different. We're trying to work through and navigate what resonates with people, what doesn't cause confusion by having to be changed every 3 weeks, you know, with the way things that are rolling out. And I don't know where we'll settle, but I think that we have great leadership to be able to try to figure out what's best so that it's consistent and can kind of be used across the summer as long as cases remain. And I think one thing that would be helpful, or maybe a recommendation to you guys, is to, if you look at these metrics, whether that's to adopt them for the mask ordinance or not, but as these metrics are really great to just monitor over the course of the months to see how you're doing as a community and what changes need to happen. Because what happens when you reach that, you know, these start not being met is the effectiveness of contact tracing becomes less, the risk of exponential growth increases, the risk of community spread increases. And so that's where you kind of see that wave start to go forward. But if you're keeping an eye on these, you kind of have a sense of, is it a trend or was it just a spike for this 1 week and now we're back to kind of where we thought? And so it's just something to consider for the group as you look to kind of make a decision on how to proceed. And again, I wish I had a timeline of when that new updated health advisory would be out, but I think they are pushing for the later part of next week. And I'll say the last thing is that biweekly case rate. If you're looking for meeting that for 4 weeks, which is kind of the recommendation, those come out on Thursday. So Thursday at noon is when that data is published, when that 4th week would be available for assessment on whether you're in the same, you know, less than 5 per 100,000.
Yeah, and I would emphasize to the council members that when and if you decide, because it's going to be you that decides that you're going to rescind the mask mandate, we want to make sure that that doesn't mean that we're rescinding the mask recommendation. It's still going to be recommended for indoor spaces. And once we have information and guidelines from Central District Health about things like outdoor spaces and if you're vaccinated and so on, we're learning all the time about what's safe and what isn't. We know that outdoors is far safer than indoors, and we know that being vaccinated is far safer than not being vaccinated. But there is still the risk of spread from asymptomatic vaccinated individuals to those who are not vaccinated, and that's the reason that I, as a vaccinated individual, wouldn't think of going into a public space without a face covering on. You won't see me in Albertsons, you won't see me in the post office, even though I'm fully vaccinated and I'm actually at very low risk. But in order to reduce the risk of spread, that I could be carrying the virus and shedding it, I'm wearing it to protect others. And that's important to know, is that once this mask mandate is rescinded, assuming that's what you decide to do, it needs to go to a recommendation nonetheless, and masks should still be used for those people that care about their neighbors.
So Mayor, I think that is our presentation for the council, and I'm happy if you want to open up for questions. The other suggestion I have is I can bring the document up on my screen and share it that has the metrics, and make any edits to that document that the council decides you would like to have made before you make a vote to adopt the resolution or not. If that's helpful.
So that would be really helpful, but let's not do that right now. I think it's great to have our guests on the screen and be able to interact with council. So I think I'm going to ask a broad question of each council member. We have a very good proposal in front of us. Gina did a great job of explaining that, and Dr. Irvin as well. I wanted to thank you and your team for helping us get to this state. It's really encouraging to have useful metrics. We talked about, we heard you talk about a couple of options. One was adopt a resolution with the understanding that those are our guidelines, and our attorney briefed us on what that means. And then the other option is to adopt the 4 with the understanding that 3 out of the 4 should be met. So let's have some dialogue on those 2 broad concepts, and then depending on that, Annette, we might want to bring up the exact wording and do some editing. I'm going to start with Councilmember Maciesic. What are your thoughts?
Thanks, Bob. I guess I can turn my camera on too while I talk. Yeah, I mean, where we're at with the, I'm just a little bit, and making my notes, I'm just not really clear exactly on the easiest way that we can then spell out the metrics to others. So maybe that can, or we can put that up, we can figure that out so that it's very clear of what those metrics are. But yeah, I mean, I'm from everything that we've been hearing and having the metrics be the determining factor, that sounds like a good solution to me.
Mike, if we edited the language or left it the same, and we have 4 items as presented to us, the 4 metrics, would you prefer the wording to be 3 out of 4 need to be met, or all 4 of them to be met?
I'd probably favor the 3 out of 4 as we talk, as what it sounds like what I've heard.
Okay, thank you.
So, yep.
All right, next I'd like to go to you, Cammie, Councilmember Callan.
Yeah, I think it's well written. You know, I of course am still don't believe in the mask mandate, but if this was some metrics that we had to meet, I disagree with the ones about the 16 years of age reaches at least 65%. I would like to see that at least above 18, because I know that, you know, there's still not a lot of studies about the vaccine for the young girls, right? So that I don't like to have that metric of that age range. I'd like to see it a little bit of, you know, 18 or 20-year-old above that. But other than that, as what Mike said, 3 out of the 4 to be met.
Thank you. Colby, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess as a matter of guidelines, you know, I think that these are, I think there are good metrics to use for guiding decisions. I don't know that, you know, that the conversation of whether, you know, if we hit 3 out of the 4 of them, if we're determines that we have to end the mask mandate. You know, I think the the guidelines in general seem good to me.
Okay, so I think it'll be helpful to us before we get to finishing deliberation and making a motion to see if there's some interest in the 3 out of 4 or just using all 4 with some edits. Cami, for example, suggested an edit on one of the items. I think it'll be easier to get to an endpoint that we all agree on if we focus on, do we want 3 out of 4 or do we want the 4 metrics, and understanding that they are guidance and that ultimately the decision is ours. And then we can make some edits. Which of those 2 broad brush approaches do you want to do? Mike?
Sounds to me like the 3 of 4 is a reasonable approach.
Okay. Cami?
Yeah, I mean, I think the 3 out of the 4, I just don't like the age, but other than that, I'm good with that.
Colby?
Yeah, the 3 out of 4 sounds like we're all in agreement on.
I could live with that. I think that would be fine. So with that understanding, do we want to make any edits on any of the 4? I don't have any suggested edits. But
Mayor
I was
Jazz.
one. Go ahead.
This is Gina. So I just want to, Cami has a really good point. And the reason that it's 16 years of age is that's how the state reports it. So there would be no way for us to get the data for anything other than 16 and over, because that's what the vaccine eligible age is for Pfizer. So they use that in all of their reporting system. Unfortunately, I don't know that there's a way for us to take that out, just for clarification.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and Cami makes a good point. And the only the metric or the state data is reported that way because Pfizer has been approved for 16 and up. Moderna and J&J, which is on hold now, but the Moderna vaccine is 18 and up. The reason that Pfizer is 16 and up is that was what their phase 3 study was they included 16 and up individuals in their phase 3 study and showed that it was safe and highly effective in that age group. And that's why it's reported that way. That's what we now have.
Thank you.
Dr. Irvin, Ms. Pennell, thanks for explaining that and answering Cami's question. Really appreciate that. Well, I think we're ready to make a motion. May I have a motion, please, to adopt the resolution? Go ahead, Annette.
Just a quick point of order with our attorney. So I am editing the Exhibit A that's attached to the resolution. And so before they vote on that resolution, Bill, should I put this up on the screen, or do they need to say as amended for Exhibit A during their motion? And I can just show you the simple wording that I added to the document if you'd like.
It's helpful if they know exactly what it is they're approving, so show that language, and then the motion to approve can include that language.
Okay.
Thank you, Annette. Thanks, Bill.
Okay, so let me see here. Bessie Jo, I do share content, not request control, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, can you see that?
Yep.
Yes, we
Okay,
can.
this is the sentence I just added right here at the top. 3 out of 4 metrics should be met for council to consider termination of the order. And then the rest is still the same. I didn't change the age. I think that's what I heard, is that it's hard to get that data, and so you were okay with leaving that bullet the same. But I took out all of the word "and" that was at the end of each of these sentences here, so that they're not all combined together. And I think that was the only two changes that I heard council say, but just want to double check I didn't miss something.
I believe that is correct, Annette. Thank you for putting that on the screen. Council, are you in agreement with those edits? Did we capture it?
Looks like it to me.
Annette, this is Gina again. Is the fourth metric statewide or is it district-wide? So I think that's a determination we'll want to make. I think it's listed as statewide. That was our original.
The one that says at least one dose of vaccine for 65 plus across the state. So you would like me, or the council would like that to say across the Central District Health region?
Yeah, it's really up to the council to how to proceed, just because of the variation in where the regions are located and what's closer to your proximity, or if you'd like to stick with statewide, but that was one discussion that we did have.
That's
Gina,
correct.
what was your recommendation to us? I was a little unclear on whether we should change that to the health district or go with statewide.
Yeah, I think after talking with our director, we think the regional or the more district-wide approach makes the most sense, because that's what we have the ability to influence the most as far as a district and communities that are part of our health district boundaries.
Thanks for explaining that, council. Are you good with that edit that we just captured on the screen?
I am.
I'm good with that.
Same here.
And I'm good with that too. That was a good catch, Gina. Thank you.
Council, do you want me to leave the sort of comments and notes that were in this draft, for example, in the parentheses that says this cannot be, I mean, I think maybe I should delete those types of statements for the formal document.
Yes, that would be helpful for the formal document, correct?
It'll still be in the original packet for the public record, but for the attachment for the resolution, I think it makes sense to clean that up. Okay. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Annette.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for doing that in real time and putting it on the screen. I think we are ready to make a motion, and the language would be as amended. And you referred to this as Exhibit A, is that correct, Annette?
Yes, I believe that's how it's referred to in the resolution.
Okay. I will
We have
look
a
for a
number.
motion.
Oops.
There's not a number on this, is there? How should the motion read?
It should say resolution 2116.
Yes, it does on the agenda, Bill.
Let's use that number, Mike, 2116, City of McCall Resolution number 21-16.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution 2116 with Exhibit A as amended.
Thank you.
That was the second, Colby.
Thank you, Colby. All
Is
right.
that you, baby?
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve resolution number 21-16, which contains Exhibit A with amendments as shown on the screen and as discussed during the meeting. May I have a roll call vote to approve this resolution?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Callan,
Yes.
Councilmember Giles,
Yes. The motion carries. So we'll look forward to seeing weekly updates on the data, and certainly at every meeting, this will be a topic of discussion. Thank you to our guests who helped us, and Annette, thank you for getting this organized for us tonight.
You're welcome. And so Aaron Greaves will put the metrics on our Mask Up McCall webpage, and we will create some way to a little box or something that will update as those numbers come in so people can see what they are.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Dr. Irvin.
Thanks for including us.
All right. We are going to move into general public comment. I know that during the day, Bessie Jo, our city clerk, has sent comments to us for us to read. Could you give us a summary of that?
Yes, we received 9 general public comments. One was thanking the council for the mask mandate. The other 7 were thanking the council for the outside ice rink at Gold Glove Park. So there was some interest in hoping to see that return next year.
Thank you. So all of those comments will be captured and part of the official record and be in the minutes. We'll next move into the report section of our agenda, starting with Agenda Bill 21-109. This is the county recycling update and next steps. County Commissioner Dave Bingaman will lead us through this discussion.
Hey, good evening, you guys. Thank you for having us. I think we're going to keep it pretty short to answer them.
Oh, we lost your audio. Dave, we cannot hear you.
Commissioner Bingaman, we lost the video and audio. Are you able to hear us?
I don't think he can, Mayor. Let's see. Maybe do the timeout sign.
Do like this. Go like this. He can see you, but he can't hear you.
Oh, he can?
I don't think so.
I just texted him. This is Andrew Menser.
Thank you, Andrew.
Good job, Bill. Oops, where'd he go? He's not on the line now. I wonder if he lost his internet connection.
I can see him.
It's interesting he doesn't show on my screen at all. Oh, there he is.
Hey, Dave. You're back on. If you can hear us, we just lost visual for a while and sound from you.
I don't know if he has any sound at all.
Is that muted symbol? I can't see that far away.
No, his mic is not muted.
Okay.
Dave, if you can hear us, you might try to call in as well. You can have your camera on and then call in on the phone line. Now he's completely frozen.
So here's what I would suggest. We have a staff member call Commissioner Bingaman, and we try to do this with a conference call, kind of, like a cell phone, have him call in to that number you were talking about.
Yeah.
Could we have a member of the city staff give Mr. Bingaman a call and use the call-in number that we have on our agenda? And at least we could have an audio discussion with him.
To Chris Curtin, I'll give him a call and see what I can do. Would you like to move forward with the agenda and we can put him back on when time it comes available?
Chris, that's an excellent idea. That's what we'll do.
All right.
Thank you. Our next item is a report out from Andrew Mentzer with the West Central Mountains Economic Development Council. This is Agenda Bill 21-119. Andrew, I heard your voice. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor Giles and members of council. If you can hear me okay, I will go ahead and jump into our report.
Yes, your audio is great.
Wonderful, thank you. It's good to be with you this evening. I wanted to give you a quick quarterly update from the last few months of our efforts. I'll start with broadband. We have 9 total topics, but I'll be fairly brief about each one, and any questions you might have, feel free to fire away. But broadband, we've reassembled our task force. We're working with Valley County on getting a third-party consultant, Entry Point Solutions, lined up to do broad-based feasibility analysis for the region that would include middle mile build out that would be beneficial to all the cities, including McCall. We're adding some industry folks to our task force to make sure that we're diverse in our perspectives there. So I'm hoping that we can both fund that and have that project well on its way by September of this year. So broadband is moving forward on a regional level. A housing update, we've got some kind of exciting news on the housing front. We've initiated our second homeowner survey to kind of explore whether we can convert some of our second homes and short-term rentals back into the long-term pool. As of about an hour ago, was the last I checked, we had 172 survey responses, of which we have a little over 60 people who are interested in a dialogue about converting their unit. And the instruments that we would use to do that would be public-private partnerships to some extent, where we could help to cover some of these property owners' tax burden, as well as furnish them with vouchers to stay at local hotels and or short-term rentals during their preferred seasons. And so we're essentially trying to fight fire with fire. And if we could convert even 10% of the interested parties, that would be 6 or 7 additional units without having to build anything new. So we're excited about the prospects of this housing conversion model. I presented at the Rocky Mountain Land Use Institute about this about a month and a half ago. People were kind of excited to hear about it, and it's got some legs. So it won't solve our housing challenge, but it's definitely a potential treatment, and we're excited to see where it falls. Working with some local business partners starting next week to kind of do some communication and outreach with these folks who have indicated an interest level here. As well as businesses to figure out what they're willing to put in the game as far as financials, and we'll see if we can convert some units to get some folks into housing. So that's exciting. On the workforce development front, when my report went out, we were still a go for our construction and trades pre-apprenticeship. We've actually postponed that training due to low enrollment at this point. Pretty strapped labor market at the moment. So we're doing a rolling enrollment, and we'll resurrect that program later this fall. We're also continuing to work with Boise State on recruitment for their community impact program for the fall cohort, and working on a culinary apprenticeship program alongside our partners in the Ketchum area with the Sun Valley Culinary Institute. I have meetings tomorrow with 3 area restaurants to help them connect with an apprenticeship opportunity there. On the early childhood front, we've hired a full-time contract program manager, Darcy LaCroix. She's based out of Cascade, and she'll be implementing our 5-year plan to try and get an additional 130 baseline 130 early childhood seats in the area. We know that there's a strong nexus between early childhood education, child care, and long-term academic success, as well as the health of our local economy and industry. As you all are, I'm sure, aware, we've lost 2 daycares in the last 15 months. And so our goal is to basically create an ecosystem where that's less likely to happen. And also we want to expand on what we have so that going forward, our industry partners are in a good position for childcare so they aren't losing employees as they go. So that's exciting, and Darcy's doing a great job so far. On the Recreation Pathways front, we are hosting a pair of workshops on May 12th and May 18th with the National Park Service. That was a technical assistance grant we received 2 years ago that had to be postponed due to COVID. And that's basically to create a regional master plan and kind of a regional working team to sort of rise all ships, so to speak, and make sure that any of the various pathways groups in our region are able to kind of collaborate and coordinate as needed for both trail connectivity, but also for grant writing and funding purposes as we go through our kind of recreational asset inventory over the next year or so. So we're pretty excited to have the National Parks partnership in place, and I have a meeting with them tomorrow morning to finalize the agenda. So if anyone would like to attend that discussion, it'll be, again, May 12th and May 18th. We've been working on just more or less just paying attention to sort of the land management dialogue. We're trying to identify a policy window or an opportunity, between city and county governments where there might be an opportunity to have a broader discussion about things like zoning outside of city limits and what annexation paths look like. We haven't been super proactive in that space this year because of other priority items, but we're definitely at the table and remaining engaged with some of these dialogues to see what those opportunities look like as the area grows. On the infrastructure front, 2 major grants that we wrote a couple of years ago are being finished up this year. One is to retrofit the North Lake Sewer and Water District with a septic receiving facility for all 4 seasons, and the other is a water project for Yellow Pine. Those will be wrapped up next month, as I understand it, and we continue to work with EDA on a variety of other federal grant opportunities. If the City of McCall and or the Payette Lakes Recreational Sewer and Water District would like us to help bridge some of those resources for the sewer challenge that exists, we'd be happy to be available for that at the local level. Between EDA, USDA Rural Development, and CETA, our partners up north, I think we could bring a pretty strong team to the table for that effort when the time is right. On the business development front, we are continuing to work with the SBA, our chamber partners, and the Idaho Small Business Development Center to explore some high-value training opportunities. We're also working with Delta from City of McCall and sort of an area team on establishing Idaho's first creative district. We brought the Idaho Policy Institute into the framework, and they're going to be putting out a report pretty soon that will help us dial in what those opportunities look like to elevate folks who are in the maker economy. And so those are like your coffee makers, your painters, really anybody who's in that creative class. We want to try and create a resource base around those folks to make sure they're successful. And last but not least, our Scenic Byway Committee is off and running. They've been pretty productive. We got a relatively new website out, and we're going to do some updates to the corridor management plan, doing some updates to signage along the Highway 55 corridor. And we just added 2 new members, one from Boise County, a county commissioner down there, and another person from Horseshoe Bend who's in the business community. So that's kind of the long and short of what we've been working on in Q1. There's a lot going on at the moment, but we're really grateful for the partnership. And it's been really great working with city staff. Chris Curtin's been a rock star with the broadband stuff. Delta's been a rock star with really everything in the economic development and grants ecosystem. And we're clicking on all cylinders. So I'll stand for any questions you might have.
Thank you, Andrew. Council, any questions that you would like to discuss with Andrew?
It's Mike. I don't have any questions, but nice work, Andrew. It sounds like you got some good things going on.
Thank you. I'm hoping to have some converted housing units for you guys at our next update. That would be a really big win for the region. And a lot of our interested parties are from the McCall area. So I think that could have some legs for sure.
Thank you, Andrew.
Andrew, this is Colby. I had a question on the housing. I guess, can you talk a little bit more about the incentives and I guess what the city could maybe expect in that conversation on what incentives might be?
You bet. We'll actually be hopefully hosting a housing summit later this year after we've been able to kind of dig through the data. But the incentives that we put out there in the survey are tax abatement, and then the the short-term rental and hotel vouchers. And then a third one is kind of an aggregator of things like ski passes, spa days, restaurant vouchers, things like that. To kind of sweeten the pot. And the logic behind those three initial incentives is that the reason anecdotally that we understand why people won't put their unit into a long-term rental pool is because they enjoy using their unit for, sometimes it's 2 weeks a year, sometimes it's a month a year, sometimes they're up here 3 or 4 days a week. But what we wanted to do was fight fire with fire. And so we identified 3 areas where we could actually probably do something. And so if we can cover a person's property taxes and lower their overhead, give them an opportunity to help the community and rent their unit long-term at market rate and get 12 months of consistent income, and then have accountability through, again, if we can have a business be on the lease rather than an individual, then for instance, I'll pick one out of thin air. If St. Luke's McCall needed to hire a PA and they weren't able to get that person locked in because of housing issues, then hypothetically, if the hospital is willing to put up, and the ballpark number I've got is $3,000 to $5,000 for a 1-year lease to cover property taxes, those vouchers for say 20 to 30 bed nights at say Shore Lodge or Hotel McCall, something like that. And then also some of these fringe benefits. If we can put together a package that's appealing to that second homeowner, maybe it's a 2-bedroom, 1-bath condo on Davis Street, just again, hypothetically, then for a cost of $300 to $400 per month on that lease, they can retain that employee, get them hired in. It gives them 12 months on a lease to figure out their housing future. So this thing has 2 instruments. One is a gap measure where, those people who they're trying to hire a professional level position, they can fill that gap at some cost, but at least the unit's available so they don't miss the opportunity to hire the person. And then the second utility is for the folks that we can retain in the pool long-term. Their units are forever there. They're forever converted from that roughly 80% metric down to 1 or 2 percentage points lower, and they still come to the region. And we'll actually build in some additional incentives where if a person's willing to come in the slack season, which I know slack seasons is not as slack as it used to be, but we'd be able to give them say 40 bed nights instead of 20. On the incentive metric, if they're willing to come, in April or October versus in July, if that makes sense, to encourage some additional economic vitality during the less busy months.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for clarifying that. It sounds like an interesting idea. I guess, yeah, it clarified the mechanism for like the tax abatement. That makes sense for like a business to take that on. So thanks for clarifying that, and nice work on all the other stuff. You're busy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been pretty busy year so far. We hope that we can actually turn the tax abatement thing into a legislative item in the 2022 session, but that's kind of a broader discussion.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew and council. I'm going to reach out to Chris Curtin and see if you were successful. If you could unmute and let us know whether you were able to talk to Mr. Bingaman, Commissioner Bingaman.
Yeah, I believe Dave is on the conference line at this point. Are you there, Dave?
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can, Dave. If you could give us your report, we would look forward to that. Thank you for being flexible tonight.
Yeah, you bet, and I will. And I'll just thank Andrew for the segue into our connectivity issues, because I seem to have a lot of connectivity issues with Microsoft Teams. Zoom, not so much, but at any rate, that's where I am. So yeah, I just wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update on the new recycling center down in Lake Fork. No idea what you did or didn't hear, but the new recycling center did open in November last year. We were about 6 weeks behind. We had some delays with our contractors. Everybody was busy, so it ended up being a little bit later. And what that meant is we just didn't quite get to the final grading and the graveling of the facility before it started snowing on us. The ground was frozen. So if you guys have visited the recycling center, late March, early April this year, it was what we had called a quagmire. It was kind of muddy out there. So I think there were some high school kids out there with big trucks running around too. But we are right in the middle of doing some engineering on that. We're going to improve the drainage around the facility. And then as soon as we get that drainage cleaned up, we're going to put some gravel down on the inside, and that should alleviate the problem in the future. So the facility seems to be well received. I talk to the attendants every time I go out there. I talk to Scott Carnes. The attendants, from my perspective, are incredibly helpful. I stopped by, excuse me. I stopped by Saturday last week, and there were 7 vehicles that were inside the enclosure, and the attendant was out helping people unload their cars and just really, really providing a nice service out there. So I think that overall, it's been a good success. I'll show you guys some numbers from the Baylor in just a minute, but I did want to give you an update on the buildings. The building in McCall is being taken down. The road crew from Valley County started taking that thing apart, and I'm not sure exactly where they are on it right now, but that should be gone in the next couple of weeks. Both of the facilities down in Donley and Cascade are gone, so that's a good step forward. And, we're still hoping that the cities are going to be able to come up with some sort of a supplemental program if they're interested in doing that. I know Cascade in particular, and it seems like McCall has had some interest in that. So, as we start moving forward into the busy season again, I think that's something that we can revisit. It would be certainly helpful, and I think a nice addition to what the county has down in Lake Fork. So, with that piece of property in McCall, just a quick update too, is that Commissioner Maupin has reached out. We're hoping to start the process on splitting that parcel that it sits on off from the rest of the parcel that the county owns in that area. And we've been talking to some developers about trying to put some, potentially put some duplex or triplex kind of housing in on that spot as well. So she's working with the city on that, and hopefully the zoning will come through on that, and we can get some more housing in that area as well. So I think really, unless you guys have some questions right now, I was just going to try to share my screen and show you some of the numbers from the baling facility out there, just to give you a quick idea of where we are. And I don't really have a lot more. Mackenzie's going to follow me up with some of the information about our marketing program. Let's see. All right. I think that works. Can everybody see the spreadsheet there?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is from July of last year. This is one of the busier months that we've had in the last 2 years. And it shows the totals across the screen. And then the big number is the 110 total at the bottom. That's the number I'll just have you guys focus on. And I'm just going to scan through a few more months here real quick. That was the big month. August was the same. September, I believe, was pretty close to the same. Let's see. We're not somehow moving across the screen here. November, you can see it started to drop. December, we started coming back up. Once we got over to January of 21, we started coming back up as well. And February and March were fairly similar numbers. So I think what those numbers all show is that we haven't seen a market decrease in the materials that are coming through the facility. We saw a little decrease just briefly, and I think that was to be expected. So let's see if I can get out of here. So yeah, I think, honestly, the numbers show, in my mind, a kind of a surprising fact is that we didn't see that big a decrease in the numbers during that transition, and they're starting to come back up. And I would expect by the time we get back into the full swing of summer with all of our residents and part-time residents back, that we'll probably have some pretty good numbers coming out of that center as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Bingaman. Any questions from council?
Hearing
Mike,
none,
I would appreciate.
Oh, sorry,
thanks. No, I was just going to say thanks for all your work on this, and thanks for making the time with us tonight.
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to say Mackenzie's going to take it off here with a couple of updates on where we're going this summer. Thanks, you guys.
Great. Mackenzie, welcome.
Thanks. I thought I'd keep this short and sweet, but I wanted to let you guys know some of the marketing projects that we're working on. We want to keep educating people about recycling with a new center. It's a great opportunity to bring recycling back to the forefront of people's minds. So in the very short term, what we're working on right now are some 4x6-inch magnets for your fridge, because everyone loves a fridge magnet, that has an overview of the new recycling center, what's accepted, and the hours and things like that. So that'll be going out soon. That's really targeting residents for the most part. We're also going to be doing some printed flyers because not everyone loves a magnet. So we're looking at including similar information that would be on the magnet, just that general overview, and printed flyers in the mailed tax notices that go out across the county. We're looking at then using some of that printed material to target kind of our secondary market, which is the visitors. It's one thing if our residents recycle, but as we know, visitors are huge in our area. Second homeowners are huge when they're here using their properties. And so how do we reach that demographic and let them know about our recycling programs? And so one of the things we're going to do is try to do some mailings to all of the registered independent rentals like Airbnbs and VRBOs. We're also going to be working with property management companies to educate them about how we can make recycling more accessible for them and their housekeeping crews, to get kind of a cycle to get those materials sorted in the house and then down to the recycling center. And then long term, what we're really looking at doing is creating a program that can help get some recycling receptacles into those vacation rentals, because I think that's the biggest barrier. When you're on vacation, you tend to just throw things. But if you had very clearly labeled canisters or bags or something right there in your rental, I think we could probably save a lot of those recycled materials from going into the trash. So that's one piece that we're looking at long term. The other thing we're looking at it could be short term, it could be long term, it sort of depends on funding. But we'd obviously like to work with the individual cities to get recycling receptacles next to just about every trash can in every city park. The city of McCall already has a handful of those. We'd love to get those in many more locations in both McCall, Donley, and Cascade. And then down the road, we'd also like to just work on our additional educational programming. That could be things like in the schools, particularly elementary and middle school, start early with some education and some fun. We like to say, it's Fire Week. We all loved Fire Week, and you go home and like pack a bag in case your house burns down. We want to get kids that excited about recycling, and then hopefully that will help all the families recycle as well. So just a little overview of what we've got percolating. We've been working a lot with Erin Greaves here at the city. She's wonderful. And I think between all of us, we can come up with some good solutions to help boost the amount of recyclables that we are able to put into our facility. So with that, with any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Council, any questions for Mackenzie? Mackenzie, thank you for that update. That's really exciting stuff. That's a lot more going on than I thought. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Go recycling. Thanks, everybody.
All right. We'll move ahead to our next item under reports, and this is the annual report to council by the library board. And I believe Jackie Rubin, who is the chair of the library board, will present tonight.
Bob, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jackie. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Okay, thank you. So this is the time of year when the library board submits their annual report, and there is a report in your packet. So I'm not going to read it, but I am going to add a few comments about what's going on, since the library is definitely hopping. So after the bond came so close to passing last May, the library board, with help from city council and lots of other community members, spent the next 7 months working on a new bond proposal to bring to the voters. The voters will go to the polls in 3.5 weeks to vote on the same great building, reduced by 2 million. I hope that everybody listening got a chance to hear the panel, the virtual educational forum hosted by Boise Dev last night. And if you haven't though, I know it's recorded and I'm sure Aaron will put it on the website and the city website or the library website. So our panel members were Meg Lojack and Annette Picard and Dennis Humphreys from TRIO and Troy from CM and Amy Rush from the foundation. And they did a fantastic job of answering all the hard questions that were either sent in earlier or sent in live that night. The panel's great answers showed that we have been listening to the public because we answered them all so well about our project. So the library board just wants to thank everyone for their hard work getting the education out to the public on our project. Our need for a larger library is not going away, but we're hoping that May 18th will solve our problem. So I wonder if Meg would like to add anything?
Hi, Jackie and Mayor Bob and Council. This is Meg Lojack, Library Director. I don't have anything to add tonight, Jackie, other than a big thank you. As everybody knows, the trustees are made up of 5 volunteers who oversee the budget, the policy, and they monitor the overall effectiveness of the library as a social institution. And we're very grateful to the work of those 5 volunteers, as well as our liaison from City Council, who is Mayor Bob Giles. So thank you very much for working with me to improve and continue our library services this year.
Thank you, Meg. I don't have anything else, Bob, unless there's any questions from the council.
Thank you, Jackie. Council, any questions you would like to ask Jackie Rubin, Chairman?
I don't have any questions. Thank you.
All right. Well, we will move along. Thank you, Jackie, for good written report and quick synopsis. Meg, thank you for joining us as well.
Okay.
All right, we're going to move into the next part of our meeting, which is the public hearing associated with Agenda Bill 21-115. This public hearing is a request for approval of a development agreement for PUD-20-01 and SUB-20-04. This is the Running Horse subdivision and planned unit development. This agenda bill is an action item. And let me explain the sequence of the hearing. First step is I will explain the purpose of the public hearing. Purpose is to consider a development agreement for PUD 20-01 and SUB-20-04, Running Horse subdivision and plan unit development. I hereby open the public hearing and I will ask staff, Michelle Grunewald, to provide comments on the application.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. This is Michelle Grunewald. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director at the city. So this item in front of you this evening is the Running Horse subdivision and PUD. It is a 13-lot subdivision on just over 3 acres. As you may remember, you held a public hearing at your last council meeting and approved both the preliminary PUD and the preliminary subdivision subject to conditions. And so what this is, it's a development agreement that is the formal contract between the owners of the property and the city that formalizes those conditions as well as guarantees the public amenities and infrastructure. So our city attorney has reviewed this item. And Steve Milliman is on the phone, and he is planning on representing the development agreement.
Thank you for that introduction, Michelle. Because this is a public hearing, I'm going to ask all members of council, all of us, to please turn on your cameras so that we on council and staff, and as well as the public that is joined us on Teams, will be able to see you while we have discussions about this item. So our next step then would be to have Mr. Milliman present. Is that correct?
Yep.
Steve, I'm pretty sure I saw you on earlier. Are you with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, staff, Steve Milliman, 706 North First Street, representing the applicant and developer of this project. The development agreement, as Michelle indicated, the essential function of the development agreement is to attach the conditions of approval and the developer's promises to the property. It does so in the form of an agreement which is recorded. And from that point forward, those promises and those conditions become attached to the property regardless of who owns the property. So it is, the development agreement serves an important function for protection of the public and consumers, and to just assure that all conditions and all promises will run with the property regardless of who owns the property. There is nothing particularly unique about this development agreement. You would normally have seen it at your last meeting with the PUD and the subdivision, both of which you approved. But due to a noticing snafu, the development agreement is running one meeting behind the other two. So you've approved the PUD and the preliminary plat. The Planning and Zoning Commission has approved the scenic route review and the design review. So this document sort of wraps up that initial process. And as I say, there's nothing particularly unique about it. It provides what our city code provides in terms of how infrastructure and public improvements must be financially guaranteed in the event that any of them are not completed prior to final platting or prior to building permit issuance, to assure that they do get completed. And our city code has a specific process for that. The development agreement incorporates that. It also specifies the obligations of the developer on the pathway, the fact that the pathway will be dedicated to the public, which again is part of the application and part of the conditions, but this agreement attaches it to the property as an obligation regardless of ownership. Otherwise, the agreement is really very straightforward. There's nothing particularly unique about it relative to others that you have seen. I'd be happy to answer any questions if any of you have questions about it.
Thank you, Mr. Milliman. I'm going to ask each council member if you have any questions or comments you would like to share at this point, and then we'll move into public comments and written correspondence. So let me call on you individually. Cammie, I'll start with you.
I don't have any comments on it.
Thank you, Cammie. Next, I'll go to Councilmember Machesik.
No comments or questions. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Mike. Colby, you're next.
None for me, thanks.
Thank you, Colby. Mr. Milliman, I don't have any further questions. So we'll move into written correspondence. That's step 7 of their public hearing. Any additional written correspondence will be acknowledged, will be part of the minutes and the official record. Do we have any?
There was just one, and it was sent out earlier today from Mr. Larry Shake. Larry Shake is also signed up to speak tonight.
All right. Is it brief enough you could read that into the record, or is it lengthy?
Oh, I sent it out. I could pull it up here. He writes, okay, Larry Shake at 1612 South Sampson Trail wrote, I want to comment on the lack of impact fees in the development agreement. As you know, if McCall followed the Boise impact fee level, each 3,000 square foot residence home would pay approximately $4,000 to fund parks, police, and other infrastructure. This is over and above the tax increase that the city receives. This would be a huge positive impact to McCall's city budget for such unfunded things such as stormwater engineering, sidewalks, and other improvements.
Thank you, Bessie Jo. So that finishes the written correspondence. We will next move into live public testimony during this public hearing. And there was no one in the building with me, so this will not be in person. It will be using our team's website. I understand 2 individuals have signed up.
Yes, Jack Spiegelman and Larry Shake.
All right, we will start with Mr. Spiegelman. Are you on the line with this?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right.
And
Well, thank you.
As is our tradition, we in public hearings, we provide each commenter 3 minutes. You have the floor, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, we own the houses at 325 and 327 Lake Street. I'm still objecting to you proceeding with anything as far as development until we get to see what's happening in front of Ruby's. When we originally had the neighborhood meeting, which was months after I heard that the city was actually meeting with Mr. Milliman. So when we got involved, it would be like a football game of us being behind 75-0, because you guys have already negotiated and talked to him. He's already talked to a whole bunch of other subdivisions. But when he met with us, we asked him if the 2 projects were together, since the neighborhood meeting for Gabrielle was going to be a few days later. And he said, nope, they are not related. And so at the planning meeting, all of a sudden, when it came time for him to speak, Mr. Milliman said, you know what? We're prepared for this condition that we're going to have the bike path go through the property. And he's already had Gabrielle Hess's permission. You know, I can't even talk to a council person about a project, but he gets information about what the planning and zoning is going to be telling him he needs before the meeting, so he can be prepared and go and have discussion. Then at the city council meeting, he made the comment, well, the bike path was always going to go through. So this gets back to why I'm really having a problem with this. We wanted to see the 2 projects together. And if you go back and you look at the planning at the Park and Recreation meeting, they specifically said you need to address Mather and Lake Street and the issues there. Now, yes, they probably approved the bike trail to go around like they said, but Mr. Milliman was not forthright when we had the neighborhood meeting, because he specifically said the bike trail was always going through to Mather. Well, we asked him that because we want to see what's happening with Ruby's. You know, when he made the smart remark, again, he's been very disrespectful to me. When I talked about the 35-foot setback, that is on the Running Horse project, but you can't do 35 feet in front of Ruby's, because the bike trail where the people are going to be coming down Lake Street really fast, they're going to cross Mather, they're going to go right in front of where everybody's eating. So everything that Mr. Milliman has commented on me, he's not specifically answering my questions, nor is the city, nor is anybody allowed to talk to me about it. What is going to happen where the Park and Rec says the most dangerous part of the bike trail is going to be? When you made the bike trail going through to Mather a condition of approval for Running Horse, you never showed us what was really going to happen. You know, I don't care how many houses they build there. I told Sasha I wish they would have built 24,000 feet of 6 houses, because I thought there would be less congestion. They have a right to build, but you guys have to take care of the people that live across the street and the safety. When the councilman threw a cheap shot at me about how people at my house are parking, I thought that was really disrespectful. Those people are paying taxes to the city. I pay, I don't know, thousands of dollars each year. I have to rent those houses to pay the taxes, plus the city charges taxes. So, you know, really what I want is the opportunity for somebody that I can talk to that can answer questions. Nobody answers my questions. What are we doing in front of Ruby's, and what are you doing about Mather, and what are you doing about all the parking that's across the street that Ruby's is using that's now part of the project? Let them build what they want. But don't force me to have to go hire attorneys and fight this even further because I'm not getting any satisfaction. You're not going to let my kids or anybody get hurt in front of the park crossing Mather. It's not fair, and we need to address that problem. So when are you going to look and see what's in front of Ruby's? That's all I really want to know. What is the safety? Where's the playground on Running Horse? How are those people going to cross the street?
Mr. Spiegelman, we are at 3 minutes, so I'm going to cut you off there.
But is anybody going to answer my questions, Mr. Mayor, at some point?
If you would please be silent, I will answer your question. This process tonight, I've allowed you 3 minutes. I think we were all listening very carefully. After we hear from our second public member who would like to testify tonight, then Mr. Milliman will have an opportunity to provide a rebuttal and answer some of your questions. So that's the process we're going to follow. Please be civil, and we'll get through this, and we will all learn a lot. All right, who is next?
Larry Shake.
Mr. Shake, you have 3 minutes. Please be as concise as you can. We did read your letter, so the council has not only seen it, but we read it into the record tonight.
Okay, my name is Larry Shake. I live at 1612 South Sampson Trail. And you guys may have also received a mock-up of an ad that I wanted to run in the paper last week talking about development agreements and or impact fees, as anybody wants to call them. But I am really concerned that the city is leaving a lot of money on the table and will continue to leave money on the table until the city council acts and makes a, I mean, I think you should stop doing permits and proposals and applications until you develop a impact fee that is similar to other communities. The example I gave you before is really pertinent. Now, you know, the city of Boise gets their income for their sales, their property taxes and stuff. I heard a comment made that oh, you guys calculated the income that the city would get from the $10 million or whatever it is that Running Horse is going to generate. But on top of that, you could have brought in another $30,000 that could help you with all kinds of infrastructure kinds of things you could have with the city. And I think you need to deal with impact fees and the money that the city needs desperately before you go on and approve a bunch. I think the horse is out of the barn with Millman's project, but I think you need to call a stop to this whole process and get some money so that you can do a study for a stormwater management and all the things the city needs. Don't just rely on property taxes. And that's my bailiwick for tonight. And I really appreciate you listening to me, but it's really, 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 Colby, it's desperate. You need money in the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shake. And those are the only two that requested to testify. Is that correct, Bessie Jo?
Yes, that is correct.
All right, I'm going to make a suggestion. Mr. Milliman, I'd like you to respond to take the first shot at rebuttal. And I may need some help from Michelle Grunewald to talk to us about impact fees. The council, you know, we're not experts in that area. So if you could talk to us about what our current policies are on that. But we'll start with Mr. Milliman.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Idaho has a state statute that allows municipalities to impose a regime of impact fees, and it specifies a process that municipalities must go through in order to impose impact fees. We have not done that in McCall. That's a legislative issue that has absolutely nothing to do with the development agreement that's in front of you tonight. I have a number of opinions on impact fees, but I'm not going to take your time tonight to talk about them. If it becomes an issue that you legislatively consider, I will certainly have input on it. The Ruby's Kitchen property is separately owned from the Running Horse property. It is owned by Gabriella Hess. From the very first words spoken in the neighborhood meeting and through this entire process, we have been transparent that the bike path will go all the way through to Mather, and will do so by means of an easement granted across the front of the Ruby's Kitchen property. That is still the case. That is the only quote unquote connection between these two properties. And that easement will be granted, will be indicated on the final plat in order to complete the promise of the developer that the bike path will go through to Mather. The alignment of that easement will be a matter for the city engineer and the project engineers and the owners of the Ruby's property to figure out. Obviously, it will not disrupt the activities at Ruby's Kitchen. There is room to bring it through between the right-of-way and those activities. There really aren't any other comments that I care to respond to. The application before you tonight is not for the project. It's not for the PUD. It's not for the subdivision. It is for a development agreement that really essentially protects the public. As far as any other comments that are made, I'm not going to respond to them. If the council has questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Milliman. Michelle, any quick comments you'd like? Just background on this subject of impact fees.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with Steve in that I think that's a separate agenda item that's not in front of you right now. I will just say that the previous councils have looked at impact fees and started going through that process and decided not to proceed. But if the council has interest in discussing it or looking at impact fees in the future, we're happy to put together a separate agenda item on that.
Thank you for that history and for that offer. Thank you, Michelle. All right, let me look at my script to make sure I keep us on track. So we've had public testimony. We've addressed written correspondence on this matter tonight. We've had a rebuttal from the applicant. So it's now time for each counselor, each council member, if they have any questions or any comments that they would like to share with staff or the applicant.
For me.
Okay, I'm looking on the screen and I'm not hearing anything, and I do not have any further questions.
I don't have any.
Thank you, council.
And I don't have any.
Got it. All right, so we're going to move on to all right, we're at step 11. I believe then it's appropriate for me to ask, are you ready to close the public hearing? And if the answer is yes, then I will close the public hearing. No more public testimony would be allowed. I'm going to ask you individually. I'll start with Council Member Machezik. Are you ready? Close the public hearing?
Yes.
Okay. Council Member Callan?
Yes.
Council Member Nielsen?
I am.
And I'm ready as well. So as the mayor, I hereby close the public hearing. No more public testimony will be allowed on this matter. So it's now time for the council to discuss the evidence that we obtained during the public hearing and decide to do either of the following. All right, so the decision before us would be either to approve the development agreement as was presented tonight, PUD 20-01 and SUB 20-04, and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents, or to not approve it. Those are our two choices. So, Bessie Jo, help me on this because this is a hearing in a land use matter.
So you can just, you want to ask the council if they have any discussion, if they want to have any further discussion before you call for a motion.
Okay. Is there any deliberation discussion that you would like to have before I call for a motion?
None for me.
Tammy shaking her head no. Colby?
None for me.
Okay, and I'm good with the information that we have. So I will call for a motion then.
I'll make a motion to approve the development agreement for PUD 20-01 and SUB 20-04 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents.
Thank you, Cami. Is there a second?
Second, Mike.
Thank you, Mike. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the development agreement for PUD 20-01 and SUB 20-04 and authorize the mayor to sign all necessary documents. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Callan,
Yes.
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Were you able to hear all the responses?
yes, I did.
All right. Thank you, council. The motion carries. So we will move on to the next agenda item. This is Agenda Bill 21-113, which is a request for a Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee member appointment. Kurt will present to us, and this is an action item.
Good evening, Mayor Giles, members of the council. Kurt Wolf, Parks and Recreation Director. So the agenda bill in front of you is to appoint, in this case, reappoint a member to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. That's Terry Edvilson. We did advertise for 2 weeks, both in the Star News and on the city's website. Terry's was the only letter of interest we received at this time, and he is very interested in continuing on with another term with the advisory committee. If you have any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions for Kurt?
It's Mike. I don't have any.
Okay, hearing none. Is Mr. Edvilson on the line with us tonight?
I don't believe he is, but I'll give him a minute if so.
No, he's not.
Okay, well, Kurt, tell him that we've appreciated his work. I think the council's ready to make a motion to continue his appointment. He, from what I hear from your committee, he does a great job.
Thank you. I'll pass that on.
So the recommended action is to reappoint Terry Edvilson to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for a full 3-year term to expire in 2024. May I have a motion, please?
So Mike will make a motion to reappoint Terry Edvilson to the Parks and Rec Advisory Committee for a full 3-year term to expire 2024.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Cami. A motion has been made and seconded to reappoint Terry Edvilson to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee for a full 3-year term to expire in 2024. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machesik,
Yes.
Councilmember Callan,
Yes.
Mayor Giles,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Thank you, council. That motion carries. Kurt, please advise Mr. Edvilson we would welcome his further involvement and as a full member of that committee. Thank you.
Will do. Thank you. Have a good night.
Our next agenda bill is a request appointment to the Airport Advisory Committee. This also is an action item, and Rick Stein will present to us.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Took me a little by surprise there. This item is an appointment to the Airport Advisory Committee. The 3-year term of member Mark Thorian expired on March 31st of this year. The Airport Advisory Commission has 3 individuals requested consideration for the appointment. Incumbent Mark Thorian.
We lost you.
Say,
I
Rick,
apologize.
We just
I
lost
apologize.
you for a couple of minutes. You were just starting to talk about the 3 candidates that had applied.
Yes, my computer dropped out again, and hopefully I can finish before it drops out again. Yes, it was incumbent Mark Thorian, Mr. Jeff Reichman, and Mr. Gregory Plummer. There was a motion, and it was recommended that from the Airport Advisory Commission to City Council that incumbent Mark Thorian remain on the committee, and the vote was unanimous. With the agenda bill, I've also put the 3 interest letters. So the recommended action from staff is to approve the appointment of whoever the City Council desires to the Airport Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Rick, for that background. Council, do you have any questions for Airport Manager Rick Stein?
None for me. It's Mike.
None for me.
Thank you, Cammie. Colby? And I do not have any further questions. So I would look for a motion to approve the appointment of Mark Thorian to the Airport Advisory Committee.
It's Mike. I'll make a motion to approve the appointment of Mark Thorian to the Airport Advisory Committee.
Second.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Colby. A motion has been made and seconded to approve the appointment of Mark Thorian to the Airport Advisory Committee. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machezek,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Callan,
Yes.
Mayor Giles.
Yes. The motion carries. So Mr. Thorian will be reappointed to the Airport Advisory Committee. Thank you, Rick, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council.
Our next item is consideration of an appeal. This is Agenda Bill 21-121. Consider a utility leak adjustment appeal on the property at 623 Syringa. This is an action item, and Linda has, as our city treasurer, has provided us some background on this. She will present, and she's also provided some options for us to consider, and they were in our packet. Linda, they were very well thought out and very complete. Thank you for helping us. This is a it is a technical matter that we're not all experts in, so thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. You're welcome. Linda Stokes, City Treasurer. I do believe the applicant or the customer, utility customer, was going to be on the phone tonight and be available for questions if you have any of her. I'm not sure if she's here or not, so she said she would be on, so I'm just going to go forward and assume that she is.
She was on earlier, but she is not on currently.
Okay. Thanks, Bessie Joe. I was looking, but I didn't know what number to look for. So I'm gonna pull up the agenda so I can refer to that. So typically, let me give you a bit of background of how our procedure is, what our procedure is for leak adjustments when we discover them. So each month when the reads are downloaded, staff goes through and looks at the billing register looking for unusually high reads and usages. And then we will, to be proactive and to save water and to save time and effort and money for the customer, we do a work order and we send the utility crews out to just do a check to see if if water's flowing through the meter, if there's any physical signs that there is a leak. We have a number of second homes, and if we don't provide this a little bit additional service, a leak could go undetected for quite some time. So in this instance, however, this leak began in 2018 and it incrementally increased over time until 2021, and it passed it. The owner did not realize in reviewing their bills that their water was unusually high. Staff did not reviewing the billing registers. The usage was not such that it was a red flag that there could potentially be a leak. In fact, some months the usages went down instead of going up, which could be, a 2 or 3 day difference in when the read was done in the month before or and then in the subsequent month. And the leak began also, which really didn't help the property owner be able to detect or think that they had a leak, about the same time that we increased the water rates in October of 2018. And we also switched from just a flat fee for every gallon used, we switched to a tiered billing structure. So, which I think led the property owner to assume that it was just the city's rate increase and made her water bill become so high. And we've increased rates ever since then in October of 2000 and in October 1 for the last, I think we're in our 3rd year now. So it wasn't until the property owner was having a conversation with a friend of theirs, and I'm paraphrasing what the letter that she sent to me, that they became suspicious that there might be a leak at their property. So a work order was done and a water crew was sent to the property to see and check to see if there was a leak. They shut off the water at the house. And even though the water was shut off at the house, there was still water flowing through the meter. And at the time in December, when they were checking for the leak, it was about I think they said it equated to about 2 to 3 gallons. What's the time frame? And it's in my memo, if you had a chance to take a look at that, but it was a pretty good rate. And they thought it was a pinhole leak. So given the fact that it had increased so slowly over the last 2.5 years, it was a pinhole leak that then just got bigger and bigger and bigger as time went on. And their highest month usage was for the month of December at 70,000 gallons, which is, some of the leaks we see are 150, 185,000 gallons in 1 month. So it's still relatively small, but given the fact that it increased over such a long time, we weren't able to catch it, either the city staff or the owners. So the owners acted quickly. So once they figured out that there was a leak, and it was more than likely in the line from the meter to the house, in January, that line was replaced. So the read in January was about half of what the read for December usage was. So it was an immediate cease of those high water usages. And so then the first full month we read the meter after the line was fixed, it was down to 1,000 gallons, which is more normal for a small house with two family members. So in March, then the owner submitted a request for a leak adjustment, and that leak adjustment was calculated according to city code and our normal practices. So what we do, how we calculate those is we look backwards the 12 months prior to the leak, calculate an average usage, monthly average usage. And I see someone else popped on. LK, that's probably the property owner, Laura Kirk.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay, thanks, Betsy Doe. And where was I? Oh, so we look backwards from the highest month, the month with the highest usage, take 12 months of that usage, find out what an average per month is, and then multiply that by 120%. And so that's our adjusted average usage. So that amount, so if it, in this instance, it worked out to be 2,000 gallons. So 2,000 is subtracted from the high read of the month in question, which is typically the month with the highest read. And the leak adjustment is then derived by applying the rate per 1,000 gallons to the difference between the average and the amount of water that went through the meter. However, in this instance, only going back the immediate 12 months would have only netted, would have artificially given us a high usage per month and high average usage per month. So since we had the data, I went back to determine when this leak started, and it appeared that it started sometime in 2018. So when the Kirks first purchased the property, their usage was 1,000 to 3,000 gallons a month, depending. It's sometimes 1, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. So in an effort to get a more reasonable monthly average to calculate the leak adjustment, I went all the way back to 2000, prior to 2018. So the 12 months after I saw a 4,000 gallon increase in the usage to calculate a leak adjustment of $151.76. Now, the property owner, Laura Kirk, she is appealing my adjustment in that this leak happened so over such a long period of time, 1 month. She's asking the council to consider perhaps giving a little bit more of a leak adjustment for more than just the 1 month. So typically, the way the city code is written, it's specific about applying the leak adjustment to the month in question. And so staff has interpreted that literally in that we only calculate a leak adjustment on 1 month. And normally that works out just perfectly because we find the leak and it's fixed immediately and the customer gets their adjustment. But in this instance, quite a number of gallons went through the meter, which the customer has paid for before we noticed that there was a problem. And so in looking at this review and what we could potentially do, I was thinking what I've provided in your packet is a way that we could provide additional leak adjustment, not impact prior year revenues. Is going back to the reads from October through January, we already did January. Let's see. And then calculating a leak adjustment based on the current year's usage.
So Linda, in the agenda, Bill, it says blank additional months adjustment is one option. So you just said that you've already granted a leak adjustment for January. So it sounds like one option that you would like council to consider with this appeal would be October, November, December, 3 months additional adjustment.
That is correct.
There's lots of pages in here, lots of detail. Could you tell us what that means financially for the city and for the homeowner?
I was just looking for that schedule because there's a schedule in your packet. So if you don't mind, if I share my screen, I can bring that up for you.
That'd be really helpful. Thank you so much.
Not a problem. Now I just need to find. Okay. So, and this is just a starting point. I mean, obviously, you know, I wanted to provide you with some option, or at least a beginning talking point on how we could provide additional relief to the Kirks at this address for this leak. So,
Linda, we only see flowers.
Right now, we have a
So what did
picture
I
of
do?
wildflowers.
well,
of
at
lupin.
least it's wildflowers and not something that's not appropriate. I know what it is. When I'm at home, my Teams is screen 1 when I share on my other screen. So now I need to figure out where this is. Just a moment, please. Well,
Would you
there's
like?
okay, you know what? I think I know what I'm gonna do. What can you see now?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay.
If you, Linda, this is Mayor Bob. If you could enlarge that a little bit more for us, we could be able to read it.
Certainly. How's that?
That's
Bigger?
great. Thank you so much.
Okay. So, in my efforts to provide some talking points and or at least a starting place for consideration of further adjustment or further relief for the property owner, I went back to October 20 through February 21 reads. These are the months with the highest reads. And then using the same monthly average that I got from going backwards in time till they had a more normal read for a property of a home of their size, applied that 2,000. And so basically we've got 46,000 gallons that flowed through the meter. Subtract 2, we would apply the base rates or the meter rates. No, excuse me, I'm saying the wrong word. So we would apply the usage rates up to 5,000, 5,000 to 15,000 or to 20,000, and then 20,000 and above to 44,000 gallons. And that then gives us a proposed adjustment credit of $109. And then so on and so forth for each month through February. So the read for February usage for February that was billed February 21 was 33,000 gallons. So that would be a total credit of $559.27. They've already received the leak adjustment for the read month with the 70,000 gallon read here. So if you like this scenario and you wanted to provide more relief to the customer, then it would be an additional $407.51 to apply to their account.
Thank you for explaining that. So I have one real technical question. Let's go up to the very top line, October of 2020.
Mm-hmm.
It says initial amount billed, $128, just in round figures.
Yeah.
Proposed credit, $109 in round figures.
Uh-huh.
So that difference would be, if we charged them correctly, they would only have been charged $19. Is it possible to have a water bill that low?
They would have been charged. Okay, so yes, actually, they would have only been charged. The rate, I think, is $1.26. Oh, $1.26 from 0 to 5,000.
Well, I thought there was some kind of like fixed cost that
There is a fixed cost. I have not put that in here. This is not their total bill. This is the amount billed for usage only.
Thank you. This is just the variable cost. Thank you for explaining that.
Yes.
All right. Well, at this point, I would like to, that seems very reasonable, your explanation of how you arrived at that. I was going to ask, before we go to council to see what their questions are, I'd like to hear from our owner of the property, and that's Ms. Laura Kirk. Is she on the line with us?
It looks like
I am. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, Ms. Kirk. Is there anything else you would
Hi.
like to add? We've been listening very carefully to Linda.
Yes, thank you. I wasn't on in the beginning, so I don't know what was talked about right away, but I guess I just want to say that it happened so gradually, and I had read about some price increases and didn't notice until probably last October, I'm thinking November, talking to some friends that had quite a bit lower bills and then investigated it. So I guess just the very like $10 a month that was going up, and sometimes it would go down, is my explanation, I guess, for not noticing earlier. And so just would like consideration and some more months covered, since it wasn't discovered.
Thank you,
First
Ms.
month.
Kirk. And Linda took us through all the history and covered all of that, and she explained
Okay.
that the option that she has put before us to approve a leak adjustment appeal with an additional, is that 5 months or 4 months, Linda?
4 months.
Okay.
Oh, wait a minute. Let me double check. Just a second.
Because the chart you showed us went all the way to February, so
4 months. It is 4 months.
Because you've already given it for one of those months?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So we've been briefed on that, Ms. Kirk, and I'm going to ask council if they have questions of Linda Stokes on this matter. So let me open it up to the entire council. Any questions?
No questions for me. It's Mike.
Thank you, Mike.
I don't
Tammy,
have any questions.
saw you shaking your head. Colby, any questions?
No questions for me.
Linda, I don't have any questions. I do have a comment. It seems like all of these things are, they could all be unique. They could all be different. I'm sure that in many cases we find the leak in a month and our policies work great, but it seems like you have been careful to work with staff and to review all the details of this case, which maybe is different than the normal leak, and have come up with a reasonable fiscal option for us to consider. That's
in this
that's
very
kind of
same
my.
thing, I'm sorry, Mayor Bob. I just wanted to add that that the very thing that made it difficult for the property owners to realize that they had a leak, the mere fact that it would go down some months and then go up in 1 or 2, 3 months and then back down, is the very same thing that led to staff not realizing it, because usually, leaks don't fix themselves, they just continue to grow. And but in this instance, there might have been 2 or 3 days between extra or at the end of the month, depending on when the meters were read. And so it just made it difficult for either party to discover there was a leak.
Thank you, Linda. So I will look for a motion to either approve the leak adjustment appeal with an additional 4 months or to deny the leak adjustment appeal.
Bob, it's Mike. I'd make the motion. I do want to disclose that I did the real estate transaction in 2015 for Laura, but I have no agency relationship with her at this point in time. So if I'm not the right person to make a motion, then maybe Bill can chime in on that. Don't think it's a conflict, because there's lots of people around here I've done real estate transactions for.
It's not a conflict, Mike.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. So I'd make a motion for approve the leak adjustment appeal with an additional 4 months for a total of $407.51.
Thank you, Mike. Colby, I'm sorry, I cut you off. Were you going to second it?
Yeah, second.
Thank you, Colby. A motion has been made and is seconded to approve the leak adjustment appeal with an additional 4 months adjustment. And could someone help me with that dollar amount?
$407.51.
Thank you. Is that the correct number, Linda?
Yes, I'm sorry. I guess I took it off of screen share too soon, but yes, that is the correct number.
Thank you. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Machezik,
Yes.
Councilmember Nielsen,
Yes.
Councilmember Kellen,
Yes.
Mayor Giles.
Yes. The motion carries. Linda, thanks for doing good staff work and helping us with this. Ms.
You're
Kirk,
welcome.
if you are still on the line, hopefully you heard our discussion on what the decision is, and thanks for working with the city on this matter.
Thanks for your time and thank you for granting that.
All right, we will move on to campaign finance requirements and elections, which is a legislative update, and Bessie Jo will present.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to bring you up to speed on some election things before the legislature this year. First, I wanted to talk about campaign finance requirements that was passed back in 2020. It is now required that anybody running for office, whether it doesn't matter the size of the city any longer, it just matters that if you receive contributions or have expenditures in the amount of $500 or more, that you are required to file a campaign finance report with the Secretary of State's office. I felt this very pertinent, being that we have 3 seats up for this year's election. So I wanted everybody to be aware of that requirement. You can file that finance report on the Secretary of State's office, and I provided a link for you to do that. So that's all I had about that. Did anybody have any questions about campaign finance? All right. The other thing I wanted to update you on is that currently there is a bill, Senate Bill 1111 AAH. It will have its 3rd reading today, and then and a subsequent vote. I don't know if they voted on it today or not. I wasn't able to pinpoint that information. However, if it does pass and it goes to the governor for signing, there has been no indication from the governor's office on how the governor feels about this bill. So not sure, we don't see anything that may prohibit it from passing. So if it does pass, starting in 2024, all city elections, including candidates for office, initiatives, referendums, and bond levies, will be considered during the even numbered years instead of the current odd numbered years. This will mean that the city level elections will be the same as the federal level elections, such as for president. To make this transition, the 3 council seats that will be open for election this November will be for a 3-year term. And then the same will be true for the 2023 election for the other 2 council seats, would be for a 3-year term. Then in 2024, the 3 seats will return to a 4-year term, and the same will be true for the 2 seats in 2026. Does anybody have any questions about that? So that's all I know at this time. I'm watching that daily. Once we get an update on whether this passes, I will forward that information on to the council. That's all I had.
Thank you, Bessie Jo. Our next item is upcoming meeting schedule. And Annette, I'm going to ask you to lead us through that.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. In your packet is the list of our upcoming meetings, and a reminder that tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. we have our budget kickoff meeting. We do have 2 counselors unable to attend tomorrow morning, so if anyone else is unable to attend, that would be good for us to know, because I believe the process would be, and I'm hoping Bill can correct me here if I'm wrong, but I believe that less than a quorum, I think, can get together and do, conversation, but you wouldn't be able to take any action on any items on tomorrow's agenda. Is that correct, Bill, or would we need to reschedule if a third person's unable to attend?
Yeah, you can receive information. It's not technically a public meeting. So that's correct, but it certainly could not take any action because there's no quorum.
Okay, so
let's find out if we're going to have a quorum. Tammy, you good for tomorrow?
the two counselors unable to attend are Counselor Callan and Counselor Holmes, Mayor.
Thank
so
you.
It would be yourself and Colby and Mike.
So Colby, you good?
Yeah, see how much sleep I get tonight, but I'll be there.
All right, you're a young guy, you can do it. Mike, you good?
I'm good.
I'm
Okay,
good.
great.
So we'll have a quorum.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And then you'll recall that you also asked us to schedule a special meeting on Thursday, May 6th to review the mask mandate. So that is on your calendar. And then the upcoming meetings scheduled for May, we have a number of land use items coming through, as well as formalizing the loan for the parks reallocation project. And then by the May 27th meeting, we'll know the results of the library bond election. And so we'll be able to discuss what's going to happen next, depending on how that vote goes. And then we have budget again at the end of May, the last Friday in May. And that will be a number of presentations by folks who have asked or been invited to give you information at that meeting. And we're also going to talk about snow management and parking policies with Nathan. And so I will stop there and see if you have any questions about anything beyond that. Although there is a reminder for June, that's when the Association of Idaho Cities annual conference is held. And I believe Bessie Jo sent you all an email inquiring if you'd like to attend. So if you would, get back to her and let her know your preferences if you are going to attend, and she can help get you set up for that conference.
And what week is that, or what days are that?
I believe it's the third week of June, like the 16th, 17th, 18th. Is that right, Bessie Jo?
Yes, that is correct.
So that won't interfere with our regular council meeting on, it's June 24th and the 25th. No. Great. And Bessie Jo is going to be off tomorrow, so Annette, you'll be sitting in the room with me tomorrow, correct?
Correct.
Council, any questions about our future meetings? Okay. I think we're good. Thank you, Annette.
You're welcome.
We'll look for a motion to adjourn tonight.
Motion to adjourn, Mike.
Motion to adjourn made by Mike. Is there a second?
Yeah, this is Cammie. I'll second it.
Thank you, Cammie. Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
If anyone is opposed, say nay. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, Council.